Yes, I've said this before, and we've been working on this a long time, and it's more a labor of love than effortful, but there is a lot of effort that goes into assembling materials and pulling things together, and we're still not done. I mean, this is really only represents the very beginnings.
Most of Judge Minor's life is back there.
It certainly is, and there's still more that's hidden in the drawers and still in some boxes, but it spans a long time. I mean, certainly his judicial service of 27 years on the Court of Appeals is a significant amount of time, obviously, and we have materials from his years in the district court and even some of the things that were an important part of his life prior to his judicial service, or his federal judicial service, when he was a Supreme Court Justice and DA and Corporation Counsel in Hudson.
What stands out in your mind on a personal level?
I think the judge's personality shows through in all of his work. You know, I've watched a lot of the videos, I've read through so much of his correspondence over the years, heard his speeches, read his speeches, and he had such a large personality, and everybody loved him. And it's something you hear in some of these videos, and it's so true. He really was, he had a magnetism, and he was quite a guy.
Again, I was given the highest ABA rating when I chambers in the district court. Late on a Friday afternoon, one of my clerks was me, a fellow named Rigo Gagan, who's now part of the new fellows. As I say, my wife was very active.
Very first moment of meeting the entire faculty, it had been a day after Roger died. And it was when the faculty interviews the dean candidates, and I got to hear all about their memories of him and the shock that he had passed. And it was really quite a moment for me to realize the profound impact that the alumni community here at New York Law School has had on the world around us. Having been a practitioner in New York City for so many years and knowing the work of Judge Minor as he did it so well from the bench, I came to understand the importance of what we do here at New York Law School and the imprint that our alums have on the world around us. So it was quite a moment. It was a sad moment, but also a moment to realize how powerful and prominent he had been using the education he got here at New York Law School. And I think that's very fitting that today we commemorate the Roger Minor Reading Room here. And it's something that we're very proud of, and we worked very closely with the judge's family. We thank you, Jackie, for all the collaboration, and certainly with the court. It is fair to say that the establishment of this reading room was not a small effort. It was significant, a significant amount of coordination and thought. When you undertake something like this, you want it to be meaningful, you want it to be thoughtful, and you want it to be a resource that generations to come will use. And so that's the way in which we undertook it. And so with the family, with friends, with former law clerks, the entire law school community, we were able to generate a substantial amount of support, financial support, and support from the creative side of how to make something like this really resonate. And we raised over $55,000 towards an overall $100,000 goal, which was really terrific. And so I applaud everyone whose valiant efforts came through and really allowed this day to happen and allowed this event to take place. I think there is a special series of recognitions here at the law school that I'd like to extend. First to our Associate Dean and Chief Law Librarian, Camille Broussard, and her team, Paul Mastrangelo, Farah Nagrampa, Karen Grushka, Carolyn Shopi, and last but not least, Professor Michael Roffer, who's from the class of 1983 and who was a very dear friend of Judge Minor, a friendship that developed from the time he served as a clerk to the judge. And it's really terrific that we have Judge Minor's legacy living here with Professor Roffer, who's on our faculty and works right here in this law library. Judge Minor worked tirelessly on behalf of the New York Law School community, as many of you know. He gave generously of his work, his wisdom, and his treasures while leaving his mark. And he was everything that we hope a New York Law School graduate aspires to be. And I'd like to just mention a few of his accomplishments. As the son of Abram Minor, who was a member of the class of 1926, he was a special part of the legacy at New York Law School that now includes his nephew, Aaron Minor, who's from the class of 2007, and Aaron Elfin Minor from the class of 2008. And that is when Judge Minor married the couple. He's also helped ensure that the Minor legacy continued through the establishment of the Abram and Roger J. Minor Scholarship, and now his legacy as judge for the Second Circuit comes to the law school through the wonderful donation of the papers here and the commemoration of the reading room. Judge Minor was the first managing editor of the New York Law School Law Review. He graduated cum laude from the school when he was only 21 years of age, and he was an adjunct professor here for approximately a decade. He was also one of the youngest justices of the state Supreme Court at age 41, and as a senior judge on the Court of Appeals, he hired 24 clerks from New York Law School, and he sat on our Board of Trustees for more than 5 years. And the list goes on. His accomplishments and his contributions were tremendous. Without exception, he was a great friend to many, a mentor, a role model, and an advocate. And indeed, we would consider him to be a trailblazer. As incredible he was as a person and jurist, he was a tremendously devoted family man. His friends and his profession were so dear to him and held great meaning for him. And I think the New York Law School community was something that he valued being a member of. And so, again, while I didn't have the privilege of knowing him, I feel like I've gotten to know him through my time here at the law school and this wonderful collaborative process. And so with that, I want to welcome Chief Judge of the U.S. Court of Appeals for the Second Circuit, Dennis Jacobs, to the podium, and he will share some memories of Judge Minor.
Thank you. The dean observed that he did not have the opportunity to get to know Roger Miner. At the same time, it seems to me that everybody who knows the Second Circuit Court of Appeals as a collegial and collaborative institution, in a way, knows Roger Miner. Collegial courts get that way only by having members who respect the court as an institution, their fellow judges, the law and its traditions, and Roger Miner was a splendid example of the kind. It doesn't seem natural for a group of strong-minded lawyers to be working together for life, maintaining a coherent body of law and learning. And it isn't. There is a rough and tumble to a group of judges who must play together over decades. But Roger's success as a colleague was summed up in his understated observation. He said, "I continue to believe that there's no problem that cannot be solved by lawyers working in association with each other." Sometimes I believe that myself, and sometimes I don't. But Roger lived it. When Roger wrote opinions for the court, for example, he wrote in the voice of a court, principled, reasoned, measured, and not as a medium of vanity. Roger was a formidable lawyer, but as a colleague, I can explain that you somehow never minded or noticed that his personality and reason were acting upon you. He never pushed. He used an arsenal of gentle weapons, his tact and sweet reason, his fund of scholarship and experience, his decent, open, friendly manner, his wit, and his musical voice. And he had a deep insight into how his colleagues think, each one of us, and what would satisfy us. Roger Miner was the kind of person one emulates without expecting to match his example. He was probably as sensitive and thin-skinned as most of us, yet he never showed it. If he exploded, ever, I never heard of it. If he held a grudge, no one knows about it. In all our court controversies over the years, he drew converging lines. Winning was about getting the right answer. When Roger was a trial judge, his jury instructions in criminal cases advised, "Ladies and gentlemen, the question here is not whether the government wins or loses in this case. The government always wins when justice is done." That spirit animates our court when we are at our best, and has been influenced and shaped by Roger's wisdom, his character, and his example. In that way, he remains a part of the Second Circuit Court of Appeals. His contribution is permanent, and his benign influence remains with us. And that's one of the reasons it is so satisfying and appropriate to participate in a ceremony to dedicate a room in his honor that future students for generations will use to learn the law, to learn ethics, and to prepare themselves for careers as honorable lawyers. Roger Miner was a judge on state and federal courts for almost 40 years, and I had the joy and distinction of serving with him for half that time. When we'd been on the bench for about 15 years, there was a voting conference in which Roger and I just could not come to an agreement on the outcome of a case. It's not all that unusual. But Roger observed that that was the first time we had disagreed on an outcome in all the years we sat together. No doubt we could come together as often as we did because Roger was as open to other views as he was persuasive in explaining his own. I didn't change my mind on that occasion, and he didn't either, but I take great pride in that observation from such a master of the craft. Some years ago, a colleague told Roger Miner, "I like the sentencing guidelines because they take a lot of worry off my mind." Roger later observed, if you want to take worry off your mind, you should not become a federal judge. His goal, as he put it, was simply this: that the loser leave this courtroom without the slightest doubt that justice abides here. I miss Roger Minor, and I'm thrilled to be part of this occasion honoring his contribution and his memory. Thank you.
Thank you, Chief Judge Jacobs. That was terrific. Next, I'd like to invite Professor Michael Roffer to the podium to give some remarks on his time with Judge Minor and this process. Michael?
Thank you very much, Dean Crowell. I appreciate the opportunity, and I beg your indulgence. I'm not a formal part of the program, so I hope you'll indulge me just 2 minutes. I'm going to keep to it. I tell my students that all the time, but this time I'm going to live up to it. So I want to thank everybody for showing up today, for so many of you who contributed generously to support the reading room and the ongoing collection and maintenance and development of this archive, which is really, when you think about the nearly 30 years of judicial, more than 30 years of judicial service and materials from the federal courts, there's an awful lot there, and you're seeing a small sampling of it displayed here, both in the room itself as well as out here. I hope some of you or all of you have had an opportunity to watch the videos that have been playing in the room, and you're welcome to stay for a little while after we conclude and watch more. And you'll see in your programs that there is an online site that will continue to expand and develop, where you'll be able to actually, we've been fortunate to digitize some materials, and we're hopeful that we're going to be able to continue to do that on a larger scale eventually, not in the immediate future, but and making the materials available to a larger audience who have interest. I want to thank all the clerks, the former clerks. There's a few other people I want to thank, but there's a lot of us here today. There are a lot of us who aren't here because they come from great distances, although we have some great distance travelers, and I want to thank them. I think a testament to Judge Minor, if you look at the donor sign in the room, if I counted right, and don't hold me to the number, but I think it was 49 of the 53 clerks actually contributed. These are of the clerks we were able to reach. And it's really quite a statement, I think, about the love that we all had for him, the respect and admiration, and the desire to continue his legacy. And that's really what this is all about, the archive. It really is about preserving some part of history, and those of you who know the judge knew how important history was to him. I think that was one of his favorite subjects. So I'm going to close. I just want to say a few thank yous to some specific people who really, because I certainly could not have done any of this without help from a lot of people, particularly Shirley Hicks, who's here, and Shirley served with Judge Minor for over 30 years. And part of the reason why these materials are so accessible and why they're so well organized is because Shirley's been keeping them that way for 30 years, with some help from the judge, because he was pretty meticulous, I think we all know, and it shows. In addition to Shirley, Matt Zappin, who clerked for Judge Minor for the last 8 years, really played a large role in pulling together these materials and organizing them and shipping them here and in helping us resolve questions. Matt played a huge role. His co-clerk, Alicia Serdick, another New York Law alum, also for a shorter period of time, but significant nonetheless, she was responsible for sending the very first boxes here and started the process, was working with Judge Minor before he passed away in getting the materials together and in organizing them in a very specific way that he outlined and documented. So Alicia. And Dean Crowell has already mentioned the many people here at the library and at the law school who have played a very large role, and I certainly appreciate all the help that you've provided, and I think it's been a wonderful effort. the Alumni and Development Office, Tara and Travis and Felice Axelrod have really done a tremendous amount of work, and I hope it shows. Dean Crowell and Dean Broussard, we couldn't do it without them and without their support, and we're appreciative of that. Just two remarks, I think, to make in closing, in real closing, and I probably have exceeded my 2 minutes, but two things I wanted to say. I spent a lot of time over the past couple of weeks looking through the videos that the judge has passed on to us, and there were 22, and I spent some time, and those of you who've seen it, I've kind of excerpted and put together a string of clips from those videos, and I got to relive a lot of my time and experience with the judge. And I won't say rediscovered him because he didn't need rediscovering, but one of the things that I found myself doing as I was watching these videos and reading his papers and reading through speeches, some of which I had never seen because I was there for 3 years, but I was there a long time ago. And that he's done an awful lot. He never stopped. And in reading some of the things that he wrote, and then in reading correspondence that he wrote, and then hearing him speak, both in interviews and impromptu and at formal speeches, I said, he does a lot of stuff that I find myself doing. He writes like this, he says this, there are these phrases, these thoughts, and it was occurring to me, I said, it's amazing how similar. And then I paused, and it occurred to me, that's where I got it from. So it was really, it was a huge epiphany for me to discover that all these traits that I had developed and thought really good about, they came from him. And I'd forgotten that, I think, and it was a healthy reminder. So that's one thing. And the second thing I wanted to say was one of the videos that you'll see, which and I think it goes to the appropriateness of this reading room. One of the videos of Judge Minor is when he participated in the reading to kindergarten students at the Greenport school that he went to as an elementary school. And he thought that was very important, and I thought it was so appropriate that we're able to actually create a reading room in his honor that houses his papers, that people will be able to learn from, study, and just immerse themselves in over time. So I'm going to leave it at that for my impromptu remarks. I apologize for going over, but thank you very much again, everybody.
Thank you so much, Professor Roffer. Our next speaker is one of Judge Minor's former clerks, a member of the New York Law School class of 2005, Helena Lynch.
On the third floor of the old Mendick Library, there was a very small display case, and that display case held some photographs of the judge and various papers, mostly news clippings. And when I was a student, I studied on the third floor, and on my way to the Carrolls, I would always stop at that display case and look at the photos and read the papers. I had no idea who Judge Minor was. I didn't know what a clerkship was, but over and over again, I was drawn to that display case. And I did learn a few things. I learned that Judge Minor was a judge on the Second Circuit Court of Appeals, that he was once on the short list for the Supreme Court, that he was a New York Law School grad, and that he had donated his papers to the school. And now, 10 years later, more than 10 years later, on floor 3L of the new library, as hard as it is to believe, the judge's papers are here. And I hope that every New York Law School student is drawn to the Roger J. Minor reading room the same way that I was drawn to that display case, even if they're not sure who Judge Minor was, or they don't initially understand why it is that they just want to be in his presence. During the 10-year interim, I was fortunate enough to learn what a clerkship was, and I was more fortunate to learn a little bit about who Judge Minor was. I served as an intern after graduation, and then 3 years in Chambers was, 3 months in Chambers was not enough, so I returned as a clerk. And one of the many memories that stands out from my time in Chambers was the way that the briefs for an upcoming sitting were arranged on this long table in the judges' chambers. They were arranged in a sort of a snake pattern. They would go up one column and down another and up the next and so forth. And that orderly arrangement of the briefs represented a few things to me. One of them was the organized way that Chambers was run. It was a well-oiled machine. The judge did not have time or patience for things that unnecessarily distracted from the tasks at hand. And the other thing that the orderly stacks of briefs represents for me is the vastness and the depth of the judge's knowledge. There could be, the cases in any given sitting would vary greatly from matters that were involved many disputes over many issues. It could be a single issue dispute, but the quality of attention that the judge gave to every dispute never varied. The quantity, of course, varied, but the quality never did. The same painstaking examination of the facts and the law, consideration of the context, and just plain smart reasoning were applied to every case, the small as well as the large. And for those of us who served in Chambers, I think we were very aware of what a privilege it was to be in the presence of that process. And sometimes we even thought we contributed to it. And we also, I think we quickly learned that the vastness and the depth of the judge's knowledge were the result of his unwavering dedication to the law. And the judge spoke at a law review symposium in October of 2008 at the school. And in his opening remarks, he reflected that he had been involved in the law for over 50 years, more than 50 years at that point, in various capacities as a state and federal judge, of course, and as a professor in private practice and as the district attorney of Columbia County. And he said that not all of his remarks were published, so hopefully my memory is accurate, but the judge said that he loved every minute of it. And of his 50-plus years in the law, every day he would ask himself, what's going to happen today? And it was so wonderful to see that the judge's, his dedication to his unwavering standards was a labor of love. And it was so wonderful to hear him express his enthusiasm for the law in the way he did that day. And so during the ceremony today, we can't even begin to capture the extent to which the judge enriched the legal discourse and made us hopefully all a little bit smarter. But how wonderful is it that we don't have to? The tangible products of the judge's labor of love are at our fingertips. And for those of us who were fortunate enough to have known the judge personally, that room is a way that we can still feel that we're in his presence and still get the benefit of his influence. And for those who did not know the judge personally, the room is an opportunity to spend some time getting to know who Judge Minor was and how all of us in the legal profession can strive to be more like him. Thank you.
Thanks so much for those beautiful remarks. Our next speaker is Emily Arsenal, who is the state director for United States Senator Kirsten Gillibrand. And I think it's quite interesting if we think about the impact that Judge Minor had on so many of his clerks, and so many, all of them are enormously successful doing so many different things, including one who is a U.S. Senator. So unfortunately, Senator Gillibrand couldn't be here today, but she has some remarks that she will deliver through her state director. Emily?
Thank you very much for having me here today. It's an honor to be here. For those of you who don't know, Senator Gillibrand was a clerk under the judge, and he was a mentor and a role model to her. She's in Washington today, and as her state director, I'd like to read an official letter that she wrote for the occasion today and then leave it with you all. So these are her words, not mine. July 10th, 2013, dear friends. It is a great privilege to send greetings to everyone gathered today at New York Law School's Mendick Library to celebrate the life and work of the Honorable Judge Roger Minor and the dedication of the Honorable Roger J. Minor Reading Room. Judge Minor was one of the finest jurists in the country, an extraordinary man, and an inspiration to countless judicial and legal professionals. I had the honor to serve as Judge Minor's law clerk on the United States Court of Appeals for the Second Circuit in Albany from 1992 to 1993. His steadfastness in pursuing justice and fairness in all his endeavors will leave an everlasting mark on the American legal system. His great love for public service and determination to put the facts before politics and agendas should serve as an example for all of us. As a New York Law School graduate, he went on to serve his country in Korea and Japan, before returning to work at a law practice with his father in Hudson, New York. And in 1976, he ran for and won a seat on the New York State Supreme Court, where his distinguished service caught the eye of President Reagan, who named him a federal district judge.